First tonight, we are working breaking news on yesterday's deadly plane crash in New Bedford. The NTSB investigators now say the plane was in the air for over 40 minutes before it crashed into rural cemetery.
The agency also says witnesses have told investigators the pilot, Paul Vidal of Westport, was cheerful and happy to be flying prior to taking off.
Eyewitness News reporter Brittany Schaefer is live in New Bedford with what else investigators are saying tonight. Brittany?
Mike Kim, the National Transportation Safety Board, tells me the plane hit this tree to the right of the plane back here. They say the pilot flew in this area often. 74-year-old Paul Vidal was airborne for 41 minutes before his plane crashed into rural cemetery in New Bedford. The Westport man was killed and the only person aboard the Cessna 150. The National Transportation Safety Board says the pilot spent 10 to 15 minutes checking over his plane before he took off.
I would consider a 10 to 15 minute pre-flight for this kind of aircraft to be a thorough pre-flight inspection.
Air safety investigator Lynn Spencer tells me the pilot was speaking with air traffic control at some point during the flight. She says some witnesses say the plane was doing acrobatic movements.
Sometimes when things go wrong in an airplane, these are complicated machines, and sometimes it may look like someone is doing intentional acrobatic maneuvers when they are not.
Vidal's wife, Carol Ann, says he had been a licensed pilot since 2001 and was likely looking out for others' safety in his last moments alive.
And I remember him saying that he'd always do that. He'd try and, if he had to come down, to not hurt anybody.
A neighbor in the area is now commending Vidal for managing to bring the plane down away from people and homes.
I feel like he's a hero because he thought about everybody else, you know, knowing he's losing his life, but he was thinking about all the houses that were closed. He was thinking about kids probably playing around and all that.
And Spencer says they'll be here on scene for 2 more days before moving everything to Connecticut. New at 6, we'll have more on how the investigators say the pilot's mannerisms were before he took off. Live in New Bedford, Brittany Schaefer, Eyewitness News.
First new details on the investigation into yesterday's deadly plane crash in New Bedford.
Tonight, Mayor John Mitchell says he's relieved that this did not turn into a, quote, much larger disaster, noting that the cemetery where the plane crashed sits right in the middle of the city, surrounded by homes. This afternoon, the NTSB gave an update on what they've learned so far.
And we also learned what the 74-year-old pilot was like just before taking off. Eyewitness News reporter Brittany Schaefer joins us now live from Fall River with the latest. Brittany?
Mike Kim, the MTSB, tells me that the plane hit the tree in the right back just before it came down. They say a preliminary report will be released in 10 days. Mangled pieces of metal remain in a New Bedford cemetery Tuesday as investigators work to determine what caused this fatal plane crash. 74-year-old Paul Vidal of Westport was the pilot and only person aboard the Cessna 150. The National Transportation Safety Board says they'll be looking at the maintenance records of the plane.
I would consider a 10 to 15 minute pre-flight for this kind of aircraft to be a thorough pre-flight inspection. We can hear in the videos that the engine is making noise. Our examination of the engine will help us determine if the engine was producing power.
Air safety investigator Lynn Spencer tells me the pilot was speaking with air traffic control at some point during the flight. She says he flew regularly around New Bedford.
We spoke to some witnesses at the airport who reported seeing the pilot before the flight and reported that he was cheerful and happy to be flying.
Vidal's wife, Carol Ann, says he had been a licensed pilot since 2001 and he loved being in his plane.
Like a midlife crisis, he had to have a plane, and he got it, and he got his license. And I think it was in the 1990s.
And Spencer says they'll be here on scene investigating for 2 more days, investigating the man, the machine, and the environment. Live in New Bedford, Brittany Schaefer, Eyewitness News.